Okay, we'll give you bonus points if you can say where this quote, who wrote this quote. No. No. Much older. Much, much older. Emily Dickinson. Poet. Or do they say for a woman poet, or do they have another? Poetess? I don't know. I was thinking the same thing, Bob. But anyway, the heart wants what it wants. It's been quoted in movies. Woody Allen made it famous. The heart wants what the heart wants, and something he did. But it is true. It is true. The heart wants what it wants. We want. Sometimes we confuse want with need, and we pursue things, and we get into stuff. Now, a little story here. There was a lady, Mrs. Bertha Adams. She was 71 years old when she died alone in West Palm Beach, Florida, on Easter Sunday, 1976. The coroner's report read, cause of death, malnutrition. After wasting away to 50 pounds, she could no longer stay alive. When the state authorities made their preliminary investigation of her home, they found a veritable pig pen, the biggest mess you can imagine. One seasoned inspector declared he had never seen a dwelling in greater disarray. Bertha had begged food at her neighbor's doors and had gotten what clothes she had from the Salvation Army. From all appearances, she was a penniless recluse, a pitiful and forgotten widow, but such was not the case. Amid the jumble of her filthy, disheveled belongings were found 2 keys to safety deposit boxes at 2 different local banks. The discovery was unbelievable. The first box contained over 700 AT&T stock certificates, plus hundreds of other valuable notes, bonds, and solid financial securities, not to mention cash amounting to $200,000. The second box had no certificates, just cash, $600,000 to be exact. Bertha Adams was a millionaire and then some, yet she died of starvation. Why? She couldn't part with what she had. She was pursuing things. The heart wants what it wants. She couldn't spend that money. Now, we all grow up in different situations. I know my mother-in-law was a depression child, and so she saved any way she could. She saved dimes. People had dimes. She said, give me your dimes. Family, she didn't go begging on the road. And she just put them in jars. I mean, she's 95 years old now. I was up there last year, and she took me to the closet in her bedroom. She points down, and she says, that's yours. It was a gallon wine jug full of dimes. I went, okay, thank you. But we save, we pursue different things, and we want different things. And sometimes those things are good things. They can be good things. We pursue them, but then they become very important. Our wants become needs. Our wants become security in our life. And we don't depend on Jesus Christ for things. We get into Matthew 6, verses 19 to 21 today. We've kind of finished the Lord's Prayer, and we are going to say that at the end here. Jenny asked me that last week. But we are going to say the Lord's Prayer. But as we've gone through this, I want you to just think about those passages and what each phrase means when we do it. But as we come to this, we get into the whole area really of materialism. The heart wants what it wants. And we go after things. You know, like when you pass the ice cream place in the summer. I want some ice cream. Or you're at the store and they have those cleverly placed items for impulse buying. We want what we want. Or maybe it's a boat. Maybe it's, a cabin. Maybe, it could be anything we want. And that is our treasure. And what we get into today is where our treasure is. That's where our heart is. So Jesus shows us a priority we need to have in our lives when it comes to our treasure. Okay? So let's take a look at that today. We get into the first verse of the 3 that we have. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. I don't know if you folks have had anything stolen from you before, but it's kind of, you feel violated, especially if someone breaks into a home. I had my office when I was at Grace Church. Someone kicked the door in and took a few things. So they took a computer that didn't work. I laughed about that one. But anyway, they did get a couple other things. But you have things, and those become very important to us, and we feel so violated when those things are gone. We feel vulnerable. So he gives us in that verse negative wisdom about treasure. Negative wisdom. So there's three types of things that he lists there. First of all, he lists clothing. All right? And food supply. All right? Basic needs. All right? Food, clothing, shelter. Those are needs that we have, so we can't just ignore those. It's not like we just, sit somewhere and say, God, I'm waiting for you to give me food. I'm waiting for you to give me clothing and shelter. God will provide, but we need those things. Then there's gems and precious metals that he refers to, where moths destroy and thieves break in and steal. So then he says, why this is futile. Why this is futile. All right? Because they don't last. You can have things that are built really well, but they will deteriorate in time. It could be a building, it could be a piece of machinery, it lasts forever. You've seen that. And then there's guys who restore these old engines and so forth, and it's wonderful. Or, like an old Trans Am, stuff like that. But they last, but they wear out. They don't last. And of course, food. How many of you have opened a flour jar ever and seen bugs in it? You've seen things like, food supply, it deteriorates. Our food expires. It doesn't last. We try to make it, we freeze things, we can things, but they even don't last. It helps extend the life of them, but it doesn't go on forever. Clothing, it wears out. A while back, I used a sweatshirt of mine that was a favorite one, that purple one I had that my wife finally threw away. It was all ragged around the hood, and it was on the sleeves. It was ripped up, and I loved that sweatshirt. But she finally said, bye. You're done. It couldn't even go to be a rag because I probably would have pulled it out. But our clothing wears out. It wears out too. Everything in this world is temporary. That's why he says, do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth. We work so hard for temporary things. And those things aren't necessarily bad. And what he's saying there is, he's saying that these things are bad when it is our focus. When it is our purpose. Obviously, you have to eat, correct? So you need to get food. But when your whole life exists around that, or exists around clothing or whatever, you fill in the blank, When we pursue wealth, the gems, precious metals that he refers to, stuff. When that becomes a focus in our life, and that's what we exist to pursue, that's when we get ourselves into trouble. There's so many times, you've heard it, you've probably said it, we all have. Gee, be nice to win the lottery. Be nice to get an inheritance of $1 million. We all think that way. But then we don't think, how would I handle that? Would it be badly? Yeah, a lot of times it could be very poorly. We could just blow money, not put it to good use for God's kingdom. And that's really what he's looking at here when he says why that is futile. But what he's saying is Jesus is prohibiting In Matthew's gospel, what he's prohibiting here is the selfish accumulation of goods. My wife had an aunt that my wife's parents would go and help her out with things. She was a widow. Her husband died in an industrial accident. So she was a widow for a long time. But, it's one of those things where you have passed through the house because there's stacks of things. She never canceled any of her husband's magazine subscriptions. So there were stacks, plus all kinds of things. And you know stories like that of different folks. If you looked at my garage, you may think that of me. We accumulate stuff. But why do we accumulate it? Our motivation is really at the heart of all these things. It's at the heart of all these things. He goes on in verse 20 to give positive wisdom about treasure. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. It's like the other side of things. The other side of things. What he's not saying is don't do anything. Don't purchase things. He's not saying that. He's not saying it's bad to have different things. It's bad to have wealth. What's the condition of the heart? What is your focus? What is your purpose with what you have and with what you get? Do you want to see God's kingdom move forward? And we struggle with that, don't we? Because we like to be comfortable, don't we? Yeah. We like to have a life of ease. One day, when I retire, and then one day comes and you can't enjoy what you got. Because maybe you've kind of abused yourself in getting to that point. Your body won't respond anymore. There's all these things that go into it. That he's not saying that these things are necessarily bad. Obviously, if something is sinful according to Scripture, it's sin. But we pursue different things, but why do we pursue it? And that's what he is saying. I forgot to do it beforehand, but I'm going to look up 1 Timothy 6:17-19. It gives us some insight into this. 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19. So that's what he wasn't saying, but this is what he is saying. He says, as for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes in the uncertainty of riches, but on God who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life. What is remarkable is that oftentimes we don't realize how blessed you are when you give. We're approaching Christmas and you hear that, it's more blessed to give than to receive. And we enjoy doing that, giving things to those close to us, but do we give to others? And why do we give? Do we give just to make ourselves feel better at a certain time? Or are we giving truly to make a difference for Jesus Christ? I've said before, when the apostles did miraculous things in Scripture, why did they do those things? Why did it happen? To point people to Jesus Christ, to point people to God, not to make their lives comfortable, not to make their bellies full. It's to point people to Jesus, and that's what we are to use our things, our wealth for. You may not think you're wealthy, but we are compared to most nations on earth. We have. We're not a have-not. Some of us have more, some of us don't. But why do we have those? What purpose does it serve? Is it just for us? And there's no shame in enjoying what we have. But are we also using that to introduce people to Jesus Christ, whether it be money, whether it be possessions, whether it be things in the future that we're saving for? What purpose do we have in mind for it? 1 Timothy explains that to us. It explains it to us. What we have, we need to put to use for Jesus Christ. So if you listen to the financial show on Family Life Network, Faith and Finance, I think, he always talks about, putting away for retirement, investments, and things like that, but with the idea that that money can be put forth and be used to advance God's kingdom. And that's the purpose of it. Yes, you need to live, but sometimes we want too much. I want to spoil myself. I want to be comfortable. And we don't reach out and minister to those. And then he gets into verse 21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And that's an uncomfortable question to ask God to show you. God, please show me where my treasure is. All you need to do is look at your bank statement. You can see how many things you spend money on that are just really for needs or for wants. Some of us have great credit card debt potentially. We go into debt because we want and we desire things. So where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And this is not just, your heart. It's basically our whole being and what we pursue. What our end game is, what our goal is in life. What are you living for? What motivates you? And that's what is so true. We allow the world to dictate what motivates us at times. And we fall into the trap of materialism. We pursue things. And that's kind of an end in itself. And that's what we need to adjust. So the heart does that. There's 5 questions that we can ask ourselves. What occupies our thoughts when we have nothing else to do? This is helping you also determine where your heart is. What occupies your thoughts? What is it that you fret most about? We all worry in different ways. God tells us not to, but we do. We love those words like, I'm just concerned. We're worrying. We're not leaving it in God's hands. We're not accepting whatever leading he's given us, whatever answer he's given us potentially to a prayer. We worry. What is it that we fret most about? Apart from our loved ones, what or whom do we most dread losing? If it's self-centered, if it's very close, because all of us, there's some of us, it's me and my family. It's like, I don't care about them out there. Are we concerned about the world? Are we concerned about who doesn't know Jesus Christ? Do we dread losing someone who truly needs Jesus Christ outside of our families? Of course, it's a given that we desire our family members to know Jesus. And then what are the things that we measure others by? That's an interesting one. We can become very judgmental, can't we? Well, they this or that because they don't measure up in a certain area. Either they have too much and they're a snob, or they're just poor white trash or something like that. How do we measure others? What standard do we measure others by? Do we judge others in those kinds of circumstances? And then what is it that we know we cannot be happy without? It's coming up on Christmas. Kids love to go, oh, I need this. I see on Facebook a lot, some younger, and it's usually like some cute animal. I want this. I need this. It could be some little miniature dog or something, I need this, I want. And we're that way overall. I want and I need. What can't we be happy without? Can you be happy without a lot of things? It's interesting, you talk with people who are older, and when they've had very little, when they've had a little more, maybe they've had a lot of times their happiest times are when they didn't have, when they were poor. Because there's some special times. We weren't focused on the grind of accumulation of material things. They enjoyed relationship with one another. I've often felt that about owning a house. I enjoyed it much better when I didn't have to do all this stuff to it. And sometimes those things become idols in our lives. And they're a problem. So really, what it comes down to is this last thing. We are not permanent residents of this world. We are sojourners, aliens. We're just travelers here, passing through. When we truly admit this, everything falls into place. When you accept that this isn't the end, this isn't everything, your perspective changes. You look at those things differently. You may put them to a different use. And your priorities change. Why? Because you're kingdom-minded. You're focused on pursuing Jesus Christ and helping others to know him. And that should be our purpose. It really should. I was truly disappointed in myself this week. Monday morning, I even prayed, God, could you send me someone in my day so I can share Jesus with them? I was having blood work done, and through this program, and they come to the house and they draw my blood. This gal who's come to my house many times, nice gal, she came and she locked her keys in the car. She had her stuff. We did the blood work. I had like 45 extra minutes with her and didn't talk about spiritual things. I'm like, you idiot. You even prayed for this. And God gave you a chance. And I screwed it up. Now I'm going to ask God to give me another one. Because I'd love to talk to her about Jesus. But we had a good conversation. Of course, talked about cats. She loves animals. All kinds of things. But I didn't talk about spiritual things. And I was like, oh, man. What is our purpose in life? Maybe I was more concerned about just being liked than I was about, do you know Jesus? About her eternity? Because I don't know if she knows Jesus. That should be our focus with our stuff. So as we close today, we're coming up on that Thanksgiving holiday, of course, coming up Thursday. Some of you celebrate different days. Ours is going to be Tuesday. But we celebrate this time of year and we give thanks. Give thanks for what God has given you to really be put to use for him. And I want to share kind of a fun song. Some of you may have heard it again. Tim's got it there. And I've got the lyric version. I love just the regular video because he wears a turkey costume with it. But it's like gobble, gobble this, gobble, gobble one, gobble. Anyway, it's a Matthew West song. And I hope you enjoy it. But just wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. Brain this week. You'll find yourself going, gobble, gobble, one. Yeah, it's one of those worms that get in your brain. Anyway, just be thankful for all that he's given us and put it to good use, even if you have one of those difficult Thanksgivings with troublesome relatives as well, too. So let's pray. Father, thank you. Thank you for the many gifts you've given to us. We thank you for the love you bestow on us. Just how unworthy we are, but Lord, you love us still, and you extend grace to us. Thank you for giving us what we have, and Lord, we pray that we can put it to use for your glory.